Over the past month, I've played 100 hours in Songs of Syx. And over that time, I've done awesome things. I've had an insane amount of fun, but I've made lots of mistakes. And so I made a list of 100 tips that I wish I would have known before I started playing for anyone who's thinking about picking it up themselves. All right, let's get into it. Just so you can see, I am not lying, 123 hours so far. Tip number 1, whenever you're making a new game, all these ones here are just versions of slider changes. But you don't have to pick any of them, and you can actually edit the sliders yourself by clicking on the menu here and then changing these to any particular value and any sort of modifier. Which leads me to tip number 2. You can turn off raids by going over to raid security and then putting this down to ×0. And then you'll never be raided. Tip number 3, you can practice military strategy and designing units before you even start your city by going into quick battle in the menu. From here you can adjust any of these different units, give them different amounts of training or supplies, and then just simulate it from there. Early game is way easier with just one species. So when you're selecting a species, think about them as your only species, probably for the vast majority of the game. But to get the bigger cities, it's a good idea to mix your species. So having one solid species as like your main species, and then supplementing that with maybe some other species that you either have as interns or just other immigrants is totally fine. But it's really hard to have like a mixed species city. And so if you're a new player, stick with one species, do the best you can with just them for now. Number 6, your starting tile should have a really good mix of resources. In general, I don't recommend any areas that have 0% of any of the resources: clay, coal, gems, or sithalon or stone. This would be a really good starting region. You have a really good balance in everything and you have 100% moisture. The most important resources are going to be moisture, fresh water, forests, and stone. Number 8, you can actually edit the tile before you even set it down. Just go over the top here, go to edit terrain, and then you can edit it to your heart's desire. Let's say you really want mountains, but you're having an issue because there's just not a whole lot of good moisture or fertility. You can go to the ground and then adjust the type of soil that you have. But the lower number is actually going to be the better soil. It will slowly get darker, and then the darker green is really fertile soil. And look at that, now you have an unrealistic starting tile. Number 10, when hovering over your city, the arrows that are coming off the sides tell you what your neighbors are. In this example, there's 3 neighbors that we have. These people have way more neighbors. Look how many different arrows that they have. The more neighbors that you have in the early game, the easier trade's gonna be because you'll have more people to trade with. Number 11, double check that there's no gigantic factions right next to you. You can look into this big map over the corner in the tile menu here and see what is around. Over here that you can see that there's a pretty big faction over in this area, and up to the top an even bigger one. You can see the specific faction if you look onto the tooltip over to the left side where it says Oakenstead. That's the big faction. Lair at the top there is the name of the city, but Oakenstead is a very big empire. Oh yeah, they're huge, actually. That's crazy. If big empires are right next to you, it's likely that it's going to be really difficult for you to fend them off, especially early in the game and on higher difficulty. If you don't like the starting setup, you can always regenerate at the top there. You can see I regenerated. I got rid of that big faction over the top, but I now only have 2 neighbors. So consider re-rolling until you get a good starting area for yourself. It's also a good idea to look at the starting resources for other cities close by. The one up to the top here is going to have vegetables and it's going to have gems. So if I occupy those cities, that's going to be a good resource I can get from that city. But this one over to the left has a bunch of clay, ore, stone, and fish. So as I'm thinking about growing, I could potentially take over these cities and maybe I won't have to produce as much of any of those resources. This one seems like a good pick for that, specifically because of the clay, ore, and stone. You can also do this a little bit later whenever you're thinking about world empire expansion, but it's also kind of helpful to see it now before you even start. Another tip about your starting tile, if you put yourself in an isolated area, you're less likely to be conquered, and you'll be able to take over that area a little bit easier. So this is a nice little area that's covered completely by mountains, so this could be a good starting area for me. Down here would be really good. There's gonna be a lot more room for potentially some other cities that you can slowly take over and build your empire first before you take on a gigantic empire somewhere else. Now let's get into the settlement stuff. When you first load up into your tile and before you set down your throne, zoom out. Tip number 14 is that all these individual boxes are color coded to tell you what they are. The green boxes are gonna be things that are forageable. Those are gonna be your fruits, veggies, mushrooms, herbs, stuff like that. The red boxes are gonna be minerals that you're gonna need a mining camp to extract. So things like coal, stone, ore, and things in the white boxes are things that you can hunt. So you can have the intellidonts or the pigs, you can have the little bird guys, you can have the sheep onks or oryx, or even some predators as well. If you want to see how good a particular area is for those resources, you can actually zoom into those resources and right click. Once you right click it, it'll tell you all of the little kind of pixel tiles here, and it'll tell you the entire size of it, and also it'll say whether there is a buff to the deposit or a debuff. In this instance, right next to clay deposit, it says plus 10%. But if I went to another clay deposit, it might not be as good. This one says minus 10%. So that means the production from this clay deposit isn't going to be as good as the other one. And just like with the deposits, if you right click anywhere, it'll tell you what kind of soil type it is, whether it's rich, or whether it's infertile. But if you kind of zoom out, you can also see the coloration of the soil. Anything that's kind of the darker brown area is pretty good, really high fertility. Anything that's a lighter brown has less. If it's super bright, super like light in color, it's probably going to be infertile. And if it's super dark, it might be a mountain. When you're planning out an area for farms, use the soil to understand where would be a good place to grow and which wouldn't be a place to grow. However, if you're thinking about fruit orchards or woodcutters or things like that, those all grow wherever you see trees. And if you right click over trees, see that the soil type is alluvium. Trees will grow here, so your orchards will be awesome. Your woodcutters can produce really well here. Number 17, it's extremely important where you set down your throat early on. Don't just put it in the middle of the map if there's really no resources for you to get there, because that's where your population starts. This big gray line in the middle here is the main road. This is a pre-built road that's in every tile basically, but if you set your throne that is in an area that's not accessible by the road, then you actually won't be able to have any immigrants. So if we set this down, you'll get a pop-up that says that your throne can't be reached from the outside world, which means we won't be allowed to let any immigrants in. The only way to fix that is if we actually build a road that connects this area to the other main area that has the road. We'll go ahead and do that here. And as soon as they're done with that, your capital is now open for immigrants and trade. In general, I recommend that you set down your throne close to where you have fertile soil for farming, trees for cutting down wood, probably close to the river also for moisture, and somewhere close to a stone deposit, because that'll be the first big mine I think is really important for you to use. If you set your throne really far away from those resources, it's going to take much longer for them to actually go and get them. And the longer it takes for you to build up those resources and build up your industries and production, the longer it'll take for you to grow, and the more likely that your city will fail. Another quick tip, mining resources are deceivingly small. This entire area here would probably take up somewhere between 150 to 300 workers from a single mine. And so even if it's just a small mine close by, a small deposit close by, it's totally doable in the game. But if you don't like your starting resources, you can always regenerate at the top of this button where it says landing party, regenerate. This will generate a similar tile that you had using the same big geographic features like the mountain, like the river, like the forests here, but it'll change the resources that show up, the deposit sizes, and the actual soil itself. Whenever you set down your throne, take a second before you actually start and plan out some general production before you press play. Use the planning tool. Go down here to the cog and tools and press planning. And now any buildings or farms or roads or anything that you make aren't actually going to be put as build orders. And you can tell because if you decide to make a farm over here, it'll show up as gray. As soon as you want to activate that farm, go down to the activate job, hover over it and press OK. And press with the left click. Then it'll highlight blue and you'll know that your workers will be assigned to do that job. Whoever's available to do it, close enough to do it, and assuming they don't have other things to do first. But be careful not just to make a billion different things. Starting out, you only have 10 population. There's only so much that they can do. It's a great idea to plan out your city, but don't go too hard. If you have everything being made, it's going to take forever for them actually to finish it. This is a little tilapia city I tried to make, and I gotta be honest, I'm 10 years into this. This one clock face still isn't even done. I have another one that's still only being planned over here, and then another one that I also haven't even touched yet. So be careful to strategically activate the things that you should activate, and if you're ever not sure, go back to the suspend jobs here, and then just click and drag. Now, everything will go back to the planning mode, so they won't build anything. And you can go specifically into activate jobs and choose the jobs that you want them to work on. And then all of your workforce will go specifically to making those jobs work, instead of trying to do everything all at once. Tip number 26, your first building should be warehouse, a hearth, a well, and then some homes. Do the long houses just because you can fit 10 at a time, and do a couple so you have enough room for additional immigration. You start with 6 stacks of resources. Currently in version 71, that's going to be the rations, stone, wood, fruit, livestock, and vegetables. The warehouse is super important because even though you have these resources, they actually don't show up in any of your storage menus until they're in the warehouse. So yeah, you might have a bunch of fruit, but you actually don't have anything stored, which means your people essentially believe that they're starving. And so, set up your warehouse, put a worker in there, and assign some of the crates for all those starting resources. Once they're all filled up, they'll start showing up over here. And then your people will realize, oh, we have food. And now you're good. All of your resources spoil over time. If you hover over to the menu here, you can see that fruits have a specific decay rate. 50% per year. But if they're stored, it's actually 25% per year. So of all these 51 fruits that we have, if we just left them on the floor, people could still eat them. It's not like people don't eat them, but over time, we're gonna lose more of them just because. And if you're scraping and clawing for population and food days, you don't wanna just leave it sitting here. These menus are super important. Make sure you read all the things that you're seeing here, including the decay rates, the production per day, so how many you're actually getting per day, especially if you have fruit farms, how many are you producing, how many you're actually using, and then where are they stored stored in the warehouses, haulers, import and export depots, unloading stations. This is super helpful to have. You can make buildings any design that you would like, so if you wanted to make a way cooler warehouse, you absolutely could. There's nothing stopping you from making a gigantic warehouse other than there are physical limits. But you can make a gigantic warehouse right off the bat. However, bigger is not always better. If you make it poorly, it's going to make it more expensive to construct and to maintain, and it'll literally take forever to make. It's much better instead to make smaller buildings that take up way less upkeep and can hold enough crates for the small production that you're gonna have. 1,000 storage of any item is gonna be a lot. And you can dedicate this one specific warehouse to any particular item. So if you're producing a bunch of farms, maybe that's where you're gonna have your fruit or your veggies or whatever. Any items that you wanna store here can be placed individually like this, but if you want to save up more space, you can use the Q and E tools to make the items itself bigger or smaller. And then you can fit more of that particular item into that space, and you can use R to rotate. There's going to be a max size for everything that you have here, but this should work just fine. Q and E is a great tool for all your other building needs as well, including roads. So you can make your road, you can make a line, you can make it like this, or if you press E, it'll actually make it thicker. Now you can make a weird, crazy, insane road for no particular reason. This looks disgusting. Blueprints are super important for this. You can save any building as a blueprint in order to use for later. One of the things I like to do is save my blueprints. All you have to do, go to the room blueprint, down in the tools tab, press blueprints. These are the blueprints you already have saved. I'm constantly making new ones. You can make anything you'd like. You can make a really tiny fruit farm and one that you know exactly how many workers it's gonna take. I put this one's gonna use 3 workers and 25 fruit. And I can just set that down right now using R to rotate it if I would like. And then it's good to go. I know exactly what to do. I could do the same thing with big crafting buildings, or I can make a gigantic farm. I can make my starship farm. Is this overkill? Yes. Is it awesome? Yes. Now you can make blueprints of buildings, but you can't make blueprints of areas. So if I tried to do this entire thing, it wouldn't work. A good idea though is to have some blueprints for some general production buildings. This one right here, I know if I wanted to make this building, even though it was general production and this one is set up to be a carpenter, if I were to shift and then left click this to copy it, I could go up here and actually change the type of production that I want. So maybe I want this one to be a tailor, put it right there. Because it's got the same exact design, I know exactly what I'm gonna be able to produce from it, and it'll look exactly the same. And I can put this production right next to it. And now there's a nice clean path that'll even run through both of these production buildings. Blueprints are super powerful. You can even make them modular like I have in here to really expand your creativity, I think. All production buildings emit noise. You can see what kind of noise you're actually producing if you go over to the overlays over in the top right corner, overlays, and then go to noise. It'll say the areas in the bright blue that are emitting a bunch of noise. You can see that down here where I have a big pump, water pump to move some water, it's emitting a lot of noise. All of these plebeians who are around this area are getting noise and they don't like that. If I click on this guy, go over to this menu, press fulfillment, I can see all the things that they're thinking right now, and I can actually see that noise is here. So they dislike noise, and currently it's at 13% the closer that they get into where there's a bunch of noise. And so because we don't want noise, what we can do is we can design our buildings to be noiseless. This right here is an ore mine. It's going to emit a lot of noise. However, what I did is I surrounded the entire production building with 2 thick walls. This menu here is really good. It's just additional buildings and structures you can build in here, and by adding the walls, it trapped in all of the noise. So now it's not a bunch of noise being emitted. However, I didn't do as good of a job over here where there's a bunch of carpenters, you can see. This one doesn't really have the double wall. There's still a bunch of noise coming out here, but a little bit less when I kind of did this little canopy area. This is still kind of a hallway people can leave, and so a lot more stuff to continue to work on, but overall, very helpful to limit the amount of noise you're emitting. Next tip I have is the hunter building. This is different from the hunter job. So the hunter job, if you select on that, you're actually going to have to find a resource with animals on it. Go to those animals, right click, and then create the bounding box. It'll tell you how many meats you're going to get and how many leather. You could do that, which is awesome, very important early on. However, hunter building is super powerful. Just as one building at 16 people with, I believe, just a couple of tech points produced, I can get 44 meat per day. And if I have plenty of meat and I want to get some leather armor or some clothes going, I can actually change the recipe here and start producing leather. Hunters are super powerful. The tech that it requires to make them better is relatively cheap, and it increases production significantly. There is a fall off with hunters. I think after about 15 to 20 hunters, the production just kind of like tanks. Early game, this is one of the most important buildings I think you can make, especially for a species that likes meat, or if you're trying to produce clothes relatively quickly, this is how you do it. One general guideline is to set the hunter as close to the edge of the map as possible. What they do is they go to the edge of the map, kind of where the main roads are. They'll go there, they'll go get their game, and then they'll bring it back to your hunter station. So if it's really far away from the edge, it's going to take longer to get there. That distance that they have to travel is going to make your production chain really long, which brings me to the next really, and I think, critical tip that I have for you. Distance is currency in this game. The longer people have to travel to and from work, to and from the things that they want, the less efficient that you're going to be. If you have people who are working in farms and they have to travel across the map to even get to that farm, that's a problem. Each individual in your city actually has a ranking system based off of what they're actually going to do. So the task that they're going to do is actually going to be based on what is ranked the highest at that moment. Currently, this plebeian is hungry. They have +4 to eating, so they're going to go to a place that has food. Wouldn't you know? That's the food stall. And once they have this, then they'll go to the next thing that's ranked. If you've ever played Sims, it's actually a very similar system to how Sims operate. They use this really interesting math to make it so that way the plebeians themselves are doing actions that feel a little bit more organic, not just the same basic things that are repetitive. However, that also means that you can't guarantee when they'll be hungry or when they'll want to do specific things. Food stalls, markets, wells, hearths, speakers, shrines, those are all amenities that people want to have access to. And you can find out how much they cover by clicking on them. So this is a food stall I'm clicking on. All the areas that have really bright white are areas that have food stalls close by. But you can see as I zoom out, there's lots of areas that have red boxes with thumbs down, especially if I go up to the top here, my little satellite failure of a city. Even though I have a food stall here, it's not producing enough to satisfy the people who live here. And it does a little bit at a time as they get a little bit more food. And so if you're seeing a lot of red in your city, it could be because you're still waiting to get some resources there. Or it could be that it's currently completely degraded and not actually satisfying anybody. So click on any sort of market, any sort of food stall, well, hearth, and see where are you possibly missing some. These are just overlays that pop up that are very helpful. Like I said, you should place your amenities where people are at. And where people are at most of the time is either at home or at work. The best strategy for where you should actually put them is right in between where people work and where they live. So this area, for example, is a great situation. We have a couple of farms that we built. We have some homes over here. And right in the middle, you're going to have all the amenities that people want. Here we have a food stall, a market stall, tiny well, tiny hearth, lavatory, the janitors here, the speakers there. You have a bunch of decorations like torches and benches, small things that add up to fulfillment and happiness, which leads into my next tip. Loyalty and happiness are going to be the two biggest failures that you have for trying to grow a city. There have been many cities that I've made where this has been the breakdown. For example, I'll show you one right now. Immigration is how you allow people in, and you only get immigration if your happiness is above 90%. If you go over to the top left corner where you have the number of your total population and click that, you'll see the loyalty and happiness bars. You can see that currently my happiness is only 89%. And so if I went over here to the right, I right-clicked on the plebeians here, I could see that currently I have the auto immigration set to 1,000. That means that over time, as long as people want to come into the city, I'm willing to allow up to 1,000 people to. However, I'm at 963. I should be getting more people to come in, but nobody actually wants to come. And that's because the happiness is below 90%. In order to find out what makes people happy, you can click on any of these menus. If you go to access, it'll show some things like whether people are starving or not, or if they're getting the kinds of foods that they like, or however many days we actually have left of food. If you look into services, what kind of services do you actually have available for people? Because those make people happier. The environment as well. Are there decorations? Are there torches and furniture or all those kinds of things? Do they have the right religion that they like? Are there a bunch of shrines? Are people doing the jobs that they actually enjoy doing? Currently, in this city, our fulfillment is down at 0%. In general, all the bars have the same system, which is that the longer ones matter more to the overall impact. If it's all red, that means it is not being fulfilled or filled up, I guess. And then in between, you can see if it's green, it's 100% maxed out. If there's blue, that means you're going up. And if it's orange, that means it's actually going down. Keep them all green if you can. One thing to note here is that your services, obviously really important ones are going to be the hearth, speaker, and well. However, you could have really great access. This currently has 95% access, 94% proximity, 100% quality, but this isn't 100% for the well. And that's because in order to get that, you actually need to upgrade the wells. And you can only upgrade the wells if you have clay and cut stone. Cut stone is a secondary process, so you either have to import it in or you have to make it yourself, which is going to require workers. It's going to require a whole bunch of additional processes. And so don't worry about upgrading these first. Get all the easy to get fulfillments first before you move on to the secondary processes. As long as you're able to fill people and keep them happy, you'll be able to bring in more people, and that'll help put in even more work with other production chains. If you want to know a little bit more about the specific species, you can either click on the plebeians tab here and press the question mark button. That'll take you directly to that species in the glossary. The glossary is your best friend, especially early on. It's not fully equipped yet with all the knowledge that you're ever going to want, but for species, it's pretty well done. And you can find out everything you want want about your species here. Their preferences, the type of buildings that they like, what they like for food or religion, how they think about the other species, what jobs make them fulfilled, and what jobs they're really good at. All that kind of stuff. The late game really needs you to have good fulfillment. If you have a huge population but your fulfillment for the jobs that they're doing is really low, it's going to be a problem. If I hover over the fisheries, I can see the fulfillment is 300%, which is the highest above all the species, and their skill is 125%, which again, the highest above all the species. And so, if I'm playing with amoebias, I do want to have fisheries as a job that a lot of people do. The more people who have jobs that make them fulfilled, the happier that they'll be, and you can see the rolling effect, right? So take some time, understand what they're good at, what makes them fulfilled, and don't put them in things that don't make them fulfilled at all. And before we get too far, if you're really enjoying the content, if you like learning about this, or you enjoy Songs of Syx, feel free to subscribe or like the video and leave a comment about your favorite tips and tricks that I cover here, or maybe some that I don't talk about here. All right, back into it. Your food supply is critical early on. This tip might seem obvious, but food supply is critical in this game. If you don't have enough food, it makes people unhappy. They start to starve, they start to eat themselves, and it's just this downward spiral, right? Eat other people? Okay, you get it. So early on, you should focus on mass production of some sort of good. Farms are the easiest way to get a bunch of food. One of the strategies that I use actually to keep our food days up, which again, the more days that you have of stored items, the happier your population is. One of the strategies I have is to restrict the access to certain kinds of foods. You can do that by going to the plebeians, go to access, and then over here you can decide whether people have access to actually eating a thing or not. And so if I was feeling like a psychopath, I could restrict all of these Crotonians' access to fruit and make it so they would not be allowed to eat fruit anymore. It's a bad idea. I'm not going to do that. Let's say you're in a brand new game and you have these starting resources and you're trying to figure out what should you do with them. Well, I'll tell you one thing. It's totally fine if people are eating the fruits. Totally fine if they're eating the veggies. People aren't going to eat stone, but that'd be fine too, I guess. But you don't want them to eat rations. The reason being is because rations have the lowest decay rate out of everything. It's only 5% a year if it's just laying on the ground, and 2.5% a year. So you're going to lose 2.5 out of 100. So I don't want people eating the rations. I want them to eating the fruits and veggies and things that I can forage around and get other things of. There's a bunch of fruits over here. As soon as they're ripe, they can eat that. They can eat meat once I hunt these guys as well. Once I hunt the bird people or the pigs, you know? So what I'm going to do is go over to the population menu here, go to access, and turn off their ability to eat rations. I can turn off anything that I don't want them to eat, but rations for sure. And what that'll do is even if there isn't enough food for some reason, I couldn't forage enough, I have too many workers or people to feed and not enough food, they won't eat the rations, but our food days will stay high. And when I have excess of other things, they'll eat those instead. Along those same lines, you're going to want to restrict access to one of your starting fruits or veggies or grain or whatever. Reason being is because if you wanted to make a farm, so you want to make a fruit farm here, by making a fruit farm is totally great. It doesn't cost you anything except for actual fruit, basically things to seed them with. And so if I don't have enough things to seed my farm with, then I won't be able to actually get my farm, and then I'll have to wait until I can get those either through trade or by foraging. So I can say, hey, let's make a farm, let's make it with 33 fruits and press construct, and then I can actually restrict access so that way they don't eat the fruits or rations. And with that, they'll actually be able to make the farm. You should be very careful about the resources that you have before you start your farms, because if we activate both our fruit farm and our veggie farm, which both require the 33 of the items, once they're finished being cleared, then they'll start adding on the items that you have. Because we had enough fruit, we'll be able to fully get our 33 materials here, and we'll get this fruit farm going. But because we don't have any veggies, because I let people eat all of them, I don't actually have any veggies to plant here, and I'll actually have to wait until I can either get them from the ground or trade for them. Speaking of getting them from the ground, I recommend you forage everything. You should go forage, you should go to the very top of your screen, and then go all the way to the very bottom of your screen, so that way you can get every single free item you possibly can. That'll make it so that when people are actually able to get stuff and find it, for example, we got a really good fruit farm over here, they'll be able to do so. All forageables are only claimable on the second day of summer. So currently you can see that they're going to be ripe in late summer, and no one will be able to claim them until you reach day 3 of summer. If you want to be efficient, you could even potentially set up a workstation close by to get some people here. But as you start bringing in more fruits from farms and such like that, you'll finally be able to put your farm together. Just make sure you forage all the free stuff. Something to consider if you have animals close by on your map is if you hunt them, which is totally fine to do, there is a risk that you can actually harm your plebeians. Right next to us we have a couple of predators. If I try to hunt them, I have a feeling we're likely not going to survive that. Oh, these guys got it. Wow, that's impressive. They're pretty good. It's a great idea early on to make a mass grave because inevitably people are going to perish somehow, whether it's from hunting or whether it's from cold or whatever's going on. Making a mass grave is a good, simple solution. It's free. It doesn't require any maintenance. At some point, though, it's a good idea to upgrade to a graveyard because that makes people happier. Food days are a huge source of happiness. The more food days you have, meaning the more storage you have of food, the happier people are. There is a max of 24 food days, so if you produce even more than that, then it won't register as anything. But try to keep it as high as you can. There's no side effects of having excess food production other than you just maxed out your storage. But there's no negative effect of rotting food, for example. So you don't have to finely tune your production to that level, right? So you should produce way more than you feel necessary. With our fruit orchards here, we're producing 14,000 per year. Our vegetable farms, a little under 3. And with grain, we're producing 20,000 grain per year. Pretty huge. And there's no downside of having excess stuff. Just make more storage. Every single building has maintenance needs. If you go to maintenance, or if you click on a janitor, for example, you'll see areas that need maintenance. Janitors are a great early building to make. They really don't cost that much, and all they use is the resources that you're already producing to fix all the buildings that you have. But it's not a good idea to put up a building that you don't have the resources to continue to supply. So if there's a building that requires, for example, tools, I think right here the hospital actually requires tools, then I'm going to have to make sure I get tools in order to actually repair that. Anywhere that has yellow around it is something that needs to be fixed. So you can see further areas away from your janitors are less likely to get maintenance. This area is generally okay. You don't need an insane amount of them, but it's still very helpful. One thing to note, if you hover over it, it'll tell you that something's unavailable that it will need for repair. So this one says unavailable metal. If I go to the maintenance tab, I can look on an area that likely is going to need some metal. My guess is it would be here it is. This goes to show that if you have the well, even if you're able to afford the upgrade, if you don't have those materials for just general maintenance, then it might make it unattainable. You can always check how much resources are being used for maintenance if you hover over, for example, stone. If you say produce per day, the estimation, it'll tell you how many you're making, how many your industries are using, and then the cost of maintenance. So currently in this city, my maintenance for stone every day is 52.26. Luckily, I have a really big excess, but there will be instances where you don't have an excess, and the maintenance itself you're not able to sustain. That'll kill your city really quickly. If your workers go to the negative here, make sure that you have people assigned to warehouses. If you click on this, it'll tell you where everyone is allocated, and you'll see that the warehouses are likely going to be the first to go. You can see here we're missing basically 30 people. Well, 10 people are missing from my warehouses. Now, luckily, I have enough to cover them for now, but if I was having some issues, I can go to the priority, and this tells you all the priorities, things to the left to have a higher priority, for example. So if I wanted to make the warehouses a higher priority, I could absolutely do so right here. If I set them to the lowest priority, it's going to change it so that way all of my excess workers are not going to be in the warehouses anymore. All these other industries are going to be serviced first before we even get to warehouses. And so my recommendation, set them to a very high priority early on. Sometimes you just have way more workers than you need. This brewery has way more people than I actually need. I literally don't have any storage for the thing it's producing anyway, so maybe I can just reduce this to a couple people. And then the same thing for the weaver, way more production. So let's go ahead and turn that down as well. If you have a bunch of excess workers, look at some industries you could potentially get above 50 workers, because once you get above 50 workers in those industries, you'll get a note saying that your production is increasing. Any sort of industry that has more than 50 workers gets an added benefit, an added bonus to the actual production that they have. Speaking about buildings and workers and all that kind of stuff, it's just a great idea to have your production chains right next to each other. So right here is a great ore mine. From here I'm producing a decent amount of ore. I'm still kind of on the back foot, but I'll get positive here in a second. This ore is going directly into these warehouses here. Right next to this location is the warehouse where I'm storing all of our ore. All the ore goes here. And then from there, right above, I have a metal smelter, which is going to take the ore and the charcoal and turn metal bars. Those metal bars then can either go to the smithy or they can go to the storage area. This is all relatively compact. I could probably make it a little bit tighter, but storage, production, storage, secondary production. A very tight, clean logistics chain. I might move some stuff out of the way here. It seems like people are struggling. And maybe I gotta move some of these out of the way. Listening to the news. Oh, it's this guy. He's spreading the news. Oh, they're chilling. It's fine. But all good. If you're having issues about getting some materials to a particular location, you can supplement them using haulers. I wanted to start mining some of this big clay deposit over here. Well, what I could do is I could build out a whole road network. I could set up my clay pit, just a little tiny one here. You can see that one, that little area requires 30 workers just by itself. And this whole area is up to 79 workers, which is a lot. And in general, probably makes sense to do something closer to 150 because of nobility, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I know to actually create this area, I'm gonna need some furniture and I'm gonna need some stones. So I can set this up, I can say that I want to make this, but I could actually go down to the logistics area, put a couple of haulers down specifically for furniture and stone, so that way it can come here. In tandem with the haulers, I can also set up a workstation. The idea behind the workstation is you get some people who are actually going to kind of station themselves over here and do all the jobs that are over here. That'll make it a little bit faster. Now, if you're wondering where all your items are going, for example, maybe your furniture or leather or something like that, you can always actually hover over the food stalls or the market stalls to see where they are at, or you can go into the food area here, directly hover over fruit, and you can see that I have 13,000 in warehouses and I have 2.4 thousand in food stalls. All of those are calculated in the food day, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But if you're specifically looking for over here, you might not see all of them. So for example, I don't see any leather here, but I'm seeing that there's actually a bunch that are in the markets. So I'm going to turn off access to that for the markets, so that way the leather can go to the tailor. So you can see currently they have unavailable leather. What's up with that? If you're not sure how many people to have in a production building, my general idea and what I like to think about is look at the production chain. What's the product you're actually making? So I'm making coal over here. Currently I see that I am negative 16.56 net every single day. That's between all of the bakeries, metal smelters, and smithies. They're using a lot. So I need to make up 16. I currently have some room to make up with my coal mine. I'm producing 89, so somewhere around maybe like 105 to 110. Let's go ahead and increase this up to 30 and see what that gets us to. That gets us up to 134. I could probably back this off. But with that, you can see now we are positive 23.83. So you can make small adjustments to your production from that perspective to make sure that you're never running out of items or you're not overproducing items. Early game really starts and ends as soon as you reach 650 population. That's such an important number because in version 71, that's where you start accessing nobility. Nobility is easily the best way to increase your production. Currently, I have 3 nobles and you get 5 at 650 and I think another 5 at like 1,000 population. Each of these nobles is adding additional production to my fruit orchards. And so if I actually go to my fruit orchards and click on it, I can see where the production comes from. I have the total value, and if you look down to the bottom, the additive stuff, I'm actually getting 2.5, which is more than half of the total production just from my nobles. Each noble maxed out would be able to get you basically 150 total workers. Oh my gosh, way more workers. What the hell? But they're producing an insane amount of additional production. Comparatively, nobles are probably, I'm almost certain, nobles are one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful production improvement that you'll get out of anything. That includes just additional farms, that includes technology. Nobility is super OP. But in tandem with that, it makes sense for you to stack your production on one thing that makes a whole lot of sense. And normally it's going to be a food type that your population or species really likes, or some sort of production that you really need a lot of. And so I'm investing a lot in the fruit orchards because they make the best use of space compared to fruit farms. They produce an insane amount. You can see 14.1 thousand, and in total I really only have these 3 fruit orchards, which almost produce the same amount as all of these grain farms, which is crazy. And then on top of that, I added my nobilities to improve that. And if I was feeling even more crazy, I could even add additional technology, which leads me to the next thing, and that is leveling up through technology. You have 3 different currencies of technology: administration, innovation, and knowledge. Innovation is the one you're going to see the most of. You get it for every single level up, and the vast majority of things for your base production is done through innovation. Knowledge is also helpful, but I'll tell you one thing, technology is very difficult to figure out for especially new players, and even me playing 120 hours, still very frustrated with the technology system. But you can level up by spending these innovation points. So let's say, for example, that I did want to increase my orchards. Over here are the different menus that you have for things that you can upgrade, and then each individual box is going to have a few things, like a few sets of upgrades you can do. So for orchards, it's going to cost me 4 innovation points. I currently have 33. The effect is that it's going to add basically 15% production, and it even gives me a little blurb at the bottom. It says that this will be a profitable investment. It's going to increase my production as if I employed 3.6 workers, which is pretty solid, especially since it's free points. I'll talk about not free points in a sec. But let's say that I want to increase my production. Currently, what am I getting with the fruit orchards? Currently, I have a 0% increase in the fruit orchards. So just with my nobilities and just with everything, I have it specifically like that. But let's go ahead and upgrade just a little bit. Now I'm going to have a 15% increase on my fruit orchards, and we'll see what that potentially does here. With one technology improvement, I got up to 5.01 for the total worker skill and 4.33 total production. I could just do even more. Let's just do all of them. I'm feeling crazy. Let's see where that gets us in total production. 15.23, 15.4. Oh, we just got another fruit orchard online, by the way. Forgot about that. I forgot about that fruit orchard. So basically like 16,000 fruits every single year. And it's ticking up even more and more. So you can see the power of technology is really cool. However, it's not perfect. In the technology tree, if you're looking to try to get some sort of upgrade but you're completely locked out because you don't have enough innovation points, if you hold left shift and then click, it'll actually give you your points back, but it'll be frozen for a little bit. So you can get a refund for your points and potentially put them into something different, and then as soon as they're unfrozen, then you'll be able to spend them all again. If you hover over innovation, it'll even tell you the total that you have, how many you have allocated, and how many are available. There is also a building that you unlock as soon as you reach 75 population, and that's the laboratory. Laboratory is not a bad building. The problem with it is that it takes a lot of workers, and not everyone is super skilled at it in the first place. The laboratory will produce some sort of innovation. This one says currently the target is 28, which means that with 28 people, that's how many innovation points I'm actually going to get. And so I can spend all those innovation points, I can go insane, I can go crazy. However, if I'm not able to actually sustain those points, then I will completely lose out. And if it gets really bad, I can actually go into the negative. This just goes to show that any sort of innovation that you place, I recommend you make it be worth it for you. So in this example, adding 3.6 workers for the orchards makes a whole lot of sense, but putting innovation points into Auric pastures is not going to make a whole lot of sense. I'm barely going to make anything, actually nothing in here. I don't even have any Auric pastures. However, the hunter will produce 8 more workers, and so if I'm able to produce all that with innovation in the labs and I'll be able to sustain that, maybe it makes sense. But just consider the net worker that you'll get. You don't want to spend 3 lab workers to produce 2 additional workers of production, right? Which goes to my next tip. Each species has different skills. You can look at the skills that they have, like I talked about before, down here, and the things that they're good at. So Crotonians are really good farmers. It's also something they get fulfilled at. But humans are really good in laboratories. And so it makes sense for you to put the humans in the laboratories and not like the Garthini or bug people, right? They're just slightly better at it. And they get more fulfillment. You can get the benefit of multiple species by either immigrating them in, or you can buy them through trade and make an intern camp. However, if you're going to go the multi-species route, it makes a lot of sense and is probably kind of required for you to separate the housing. So this is my lab and innovation sector. The only people who are allowed to be here are actually the humans. And you can actually separate who gets to be places by clicking on the house itself, the assign button, and then assigning what kind of species should be here. So all of my human interns are here, whereas everyone else is going to have my Talapi, plebeians, and then even down here where I have some more clay mines and things like that, these are where I have my Amevia interns. If you have housing too close together, you'll start brawls and people will be very angry. You can see you can either click on the check mark, or if you go over here to the check mark in the Tome of Knowledge and you scroll down, this is where the different species were. You can actually click on the species and see kind of what they think of other species. So you can see the Crotonians, they're cool with Talapi. Talapi don't necessarily like Crotonians that much. And if there are particular species that really don't like each other, so the Dondorians and the Talapis are likely, then it's a bad idea to have species living close by, so I tend to segregate them. One last tip, if you're going to bring in some interns, you need to have a stockade. If you don't have a stockade, you won't be able to actually bring them in even if you buy them. From the stockade, then you can assign all of your captives to be enslaved, or if you're Talapi or Garthimi, you can harvest them. Number 78-ish, I think I'm around there. We talked about this before. You don't really want your plebeians to be eating food if you need them for like planting farms, right? Well, the same thing goes with clothes. So the next little section we'll talk about like war and lawfulness and like raiders and things like that. But the big thing with military is that you're not actually able to raise them unless you have some supplies. And for that, you're going to need your army supply depots. I set up a few of them over here next to my big archer training ground. You'll remember this from my archer empire destroying video. But basically, each of these army supply stations are designated for a specific item. The thing you need a minimum of 2 things, and that's going to be the rations and the clothes. If you have rations and clothes, you can send your unarmed troops or whatever wherever you'd like, but if you don't have these prepared, then you can't actually go to war. So make sure that you have enough excess to supply your military. You can actually go into the Empire tab. You can actually press tab, or you can click this little button over here, the toggle view. And if you go over to your military in the upper left section where the sword is and armies, and you go to recruit, you can see the little things that you need in order to get your people supplied. But the main thing you have to have is clothes. If you don't have clothes, your armies are going to be really bad. And if you don't have rations, your armies are going to be really bad if they even leave at all. Each of your soldiers is going to consume 0.5 items per year, which isn't a lot. And so you don't need an insane amount of clothes to make this work, but you do need the clothes. And so if you're running out of items, one of the issues might be that you're selling them. So you can go to your markets, like we showed with the other food stalls. If you actually click on your markets, you can adjust the things that you're selling. So from here, again, you can turn off all all the clothes being able to be sold from markets, which will decrease some happiness from your plebeians, but not that much, especially if you've given them a whole bunch of other things. But that will allow you to keep up the sustainability of your army supply. If you're able to produce way more than enough clothes, that's totally fine. It's not a big deal. And then the same thing with rations. Again, you can either turn off the rations from the food stalls, or you can go to access and turn it off from here. That's what I did. But you want to make sure that you have rations and clothes, as well as your other items. So the archers, obviously, I want to have bows. If you have more melee units, you want to have swords or armor, all that kind of stuff. But each individual item should have its own army supply depot. That's how you get these supplied out in the field. Now, speaking of war, you need to create some units. These are a bunch of units that I've already made. A lot of them are out on the field, but let's go to a different save and I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is a town for a bigger video that I've been making, and I currently only have a couple of units supplied, but one of the ways that you can actually create a unit is by clicking on your sword tab up in the upper left of your main town. The sword tab says army. Click on that. It's going to start out with 4 individual units, but they're not going to be supplied with anybody because you don't have anyone trained. But the way that you would make a unit, you can create them with this create button. You can click on them and then edit, and then you can adjust. You can adjust size. You can make them really big or smaller. You can adjust how much melee training they get. All sorts of things you can adjust from here. I'm going to go ahead and disband this one because I don't want it. The other ones are fine for what I need. But if you're thinking about how best to set up your soldiers, it's really important that you give them some sort of training. Up in here, it says melee training. The more training that you give them, the better they are in general as soldiers. Their morale will increase, their power will go up, and all that kind of stuff. But the longer that you train them, the longer it takes. This group here, my Division 4, is going to be a 50% melee train, so it's going to take them 60 days to train up. Whereas all these groups, they're much smaller. They only have 30% training, and it takes 40 days. And you can also unlock technologies that will allow you to train things faster. That's where I got to in my archer video. I was able to train archer units much quicker. Now that you have some military units, you've outfitted them with whatever you need, whether it's the training or whether it's the actual armor, or in this case, I made a few flanks for people. And so I'm going to supply as many as I can of here with just flanks. I could probably do so with armor as well. Maybe I will, since I'm already here. Just give them some armor. That'll be great. Each one of these little pips here, so if you can keep adding the armor here, that's like, I heard someone else say this, like additional pieces of armor. So if I only gave them one, it's basically just a breastplate is kind of how I view it. But essentially it boosts your stats a little bit. It boosts these stats down here. Slash armor, pierce armor. It just increases their general defense. We'll just give them the one for now. It's fine. I'm going to have to make more leather armor, which I'll figure that out, but that's how you generally outfit your specific units. Now, in order to actually get units in the first place, you have to have a training ground set up. That's what these are right here. That's what these are right here, training grounds. You can make gigantic ones or just some small ones. These ones only have 20 spaces in each. So you actually unlock your training grounds at 200 population. And once you have some armies set up, what you can do is you can hop on over to your military section and assign them as guards. Guard posts are a technology that you have to unlock. You'll go into the technology, go into administration, and over here, guards, you'll unlock this. The reason this is important is it keeps up your loyalty. So if you have guards, you're going to have more loyalty in general. Law is really important. If you go onto the law tab up here, you can see guards. Currently it's at 15%, which for Crotonians, it's not that big of a deal because they're generally lawful, but other species like humans are more prone to breaking law, I'll say. So guard posts are really important. You can set them up here in the in the law section. Guard posts, you can put them up here. But in order to assign them, what I would recommend you do is you go into your army, you pick a specific unit. This one right here is already trained up. If I look at them, I can see at the bottom it says fully trained is 20, active duty is 20. And once you hover over them, go ahead and click on this active duty button here, and you'll see a little green shield hover over their little icon area. And those are the ones who are going to staff these guard posts. Now, not all of them are going to be staffed. It's not that big of a deal, but they'll staff as they're able. So this guy, it's got 3 guard posts. There we go. Everyone's got staff now. I wonder why. Oh, they're out on patrols. That's why. Yeah, sometimes you'll just see him out in patrols, man. It's pretty cool. Let's go look for him. He's getting gear, and they're guarding. Very cool. Guard posts are also really important for law, obviously, but for any interns that you have, it's really important to have guard posts set up so that way you increase their loyalty. As your loyalty goes down, you're more likely to have, riots and just general upheaval of your city. So it's really important to have your military sooner than you think. This playthrough, currently I'm at 1,500 population. I was able to start getting these military units pretty early on, and they're really important. When I first started playing the game, I tried to upgrade them as much as possible, but to be honest with you, just getting a starting unit is much better than nothing. So make sure you do that. It's especially important if you have raiders. If you click on the raiding tab up at the top here, you'll see all the different raiders that are happening. Roberta the Merciless came in, and when I was a smaller town, they were able to come in here, and I just didn't have the power to defend myself, so I ended up just paying them off. I lost some money, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I would have ended up losing some people, which would have been more difficult to come back from. But if you have an army set up, you might be able to actually defeat them. And if you defeat them, it's actually a really good payday. So it's, I think, pretty important to get your power up just enough so that way you have enough numbers to outmaneuver those raiders that come in. But really quickly, let's go over how to beat some raiders. We're gonna do a quick battle. I'll show you exactly kind of what I'm talking about here. Most of the time, what you're gonna have is just a small little group. So if you look at the enemy units, normally you'll have like a couple of archer people, and maybe they'll have some armor and like a little bit of experience, right? So you can add them. Oh, I didn't give them any. They'll have like 2 bows or something. That's a huge unit. And there will only be like a couple of them. So maybe you'll only get, you know, like 10 of this unit, and maybe you'll get even less amoebas. And they'll have like 20% training, and then they'll get like a few more of these bad boys. And so this is actually like a really good starting raider that you're gonna face. So imagine that you only have some people who are set up to, let's say you got a solid 20 people who have 30% melee, who have some leather armor, and who have some spears. And let's say you got 2 units of those. Actually, let's just do a total of 3 units, right? So obviously you're gonna have more people. It's 3 to 1 in your favor. And early on, that's a really big deal. Now, when you first start off, you'll be close to your throne. Over in the back here, you'll see that the main objective is defeat the enemy before they can come in here and like clean your throne. They have to sit over it for over like 300 seconds or whatever. But this will be like your army that you have here, right? Here's just a general rule of thumb if you ever played Total War before, something like that. Get a nice couple of stacks here, and the whole goal here is to allow them to approach you and then just encircle them. They do have some archer units. If they were really good archer units, I would be a little bit more worried about this. I guess they have some archers too there, oddly enough. Since they are archers, let's go ahead and do a big bull rush attack. So we'll go ahead and get this started. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go meet them in the field. Let's go find them. We'll speed this up. Now the whole goal is as we get a little bit closer, let's wait for everyone to kind of meet. What we're going to do is we're going to go a charge after them, and we're going to do a bull rush maneuver. And the idea is to try to knock them down as much as possible. For this unit over back here, what we're going to do is we're going to turn them around. With this unit, we're going to get them a little bit tighter in formation. And with this time here, what we're going to do is we're going to come in the back, pause, and then we're going to flank them. Now, flanking is super important in this game. You can absolutely decimate teams who are maybe slightly more prepared than you are. Now, because we're engulfing this Talapi unit here, eventually we'll be able to beat them, even though technically they're better than us. But because their flanks are compromised, they're getting pretty beat up. This unit right here that we're fighting is actually themselves being pretty beat up. That's kind of funny to think about, actually. And just like that, you won. Most secrets to battles are going to be all about flanking. And if anyone has an archer unit, trying to get them as quickly as possible is definitely a really important skill. Let's go ahead and do these guys. We'll do 3 deep seems fine. We'll try that. And since we're trying to meet them as fast as possible, let's go ahead and just get this started. What we're gonna do is we're not gonna run and get ourselves too tired. This particular unit you can see has a little bit more training. We're gonna hold off. In fact, we might even back up a little bit just to make sure we're all kind of in one clean formation here. Let's go ahead and step up. And then the goal here is to completely attack this unit and just crush them. So by doing that maneuver here, where we are charging them, we're able to actually knock some down. Let's go ahead and do the same to these guys. Oh yeah, you see a whole bunch of people got knocked down, but you also have to be careful because we also get knocked down. Now, the one thing I want to do here is I want to flank this team here. And so we're going to move to the back as we start taking them down. And we'll even do the same for these guys. Charge into the back here, weaken their defenses, and when their flanks are compromised, it's over. Flanks compromised. What about these guys? Yeah, they're over. There's only one left. They're gonna get beat, and then they start running, and then you can just clean it up from there. Let's go ahead and get our formation intact, and then we will finish it off. Perfect. Just like that, you know how to beat your first raiders. You get a much larger force, give them just a few items to get them set up, and then you can beat them. When designing your units, thinking about things like morale goes a long way. I'll just make this guy for an example here. Morale is this blue button, or blue bar down here, and it's at 3 right now. The more training that you give them, the higher that number goes, and so the higher that their morale goes, the better they end up performing. They get morale through both training and through experience. With really high morale, you'll stick around a little bit longer, even when maybe you're outnumbered, and so that way you can pull out some upsets. However, of course, the more training that you give them, the longer it takes for them to actually deploy, so it could be worth it, but it isn't always. Pick or choose. I tend to see around 30 to 40% training just to get you a military that is actually deployable is totally serviceable for all the raiders early on. Setting up for conquest, though, I would definitely consider understanding who are the people actually around you. So let's say that I wanted to take Blessed Batfin. They currently have a few units. They have 129 of those guys. Kryptonians with shields, leather armor, and spears. They have 61 humans. So obviously a couple of like really good units. And I think if we stacked up comparatively to what we have, these guys are significantly underpowered for that. And so the only way to really beat them would to be smothering them with a much larger force, which we're just not at yet. So that's definitely not a target for us to attack. Now, one thing you can do if you're really able to get your economy up and running, you can actually buy mercenaries. So instead of actually recruiting your guys, instead of having to recruit your guys, you can actually purchase mercenaries. Now, they're very expensive. They cost a lot of money, but this has a great benefit of not costing you any lives from your own plebeians, and they tend to have a pretty good upscale in their skills. And so you can take over just a couple of cities and then start supplying your city with some of those extra resources, as long as you can keep that other region satisfied. So mercenaries are a great tip. I haven't experimented with too much, but smells like a video I might make soon. Let me know if you're interested. Conquering city is super powerful. Let's go to my Talapi city to show you what I'm talking about. Now, if you remember from my Talapi archer empire destroying video, what we did is we built up a good sized archery unit and we went and actually conquered a couple of cities. So this was our main town right here. We ended up taking over Fickenstad and Pix Pact after some revenge stuff. But Fickenstad, well, just to give you an example, whenever we took them over, we had very low loyalty. These bars up here tell you a little bit about what's going on. They can tell you proximity. They can tell you support, which basically is how frequently are you going to have rebellions, if at all. And kind of down here, I found this out. In this bar down here, it'll tell you whether you're on a good trajectory or not. So population, hygiene, how things are going, and then the current loyalty, basically to you. We're at 46% and we're slightly up every single day. The reason all this matters is because we have something inputted into this. One of the things that we have from them, actually oddly enough, is a fruit orchard. And every single day, they provide us basically 157 fruit and 600 denarii. If we actually go into our main city and look at our fruit, we can see that in the produce per day, we have our fruit farms, our fruit orchards, and then taxes. The taxes are 157 per day, and if you think about that, 157 for just holding the province is awesome. Our fruit farms are completely leveled up. With our super leveled up and with nobilities fruit orchards, we're able to produce a decent amount, but with just one occupied city, we're able to get 157 just from holding it. And you can do that with other resources too. If we look at our treasury, we'll be able to see that we received 600 for tax, even got some money for tourism, didn't even realize we had tourists. I haven't gotten that far in the game to care about tourists. We do have one of our garrisons there to make sure that people are loyal. And it looks like they're plenty loyal. So for that reason, we can probably make some adjustments here, maybe get rid of the brewery or something along those lines. Yeah, let's get rid of the brewery. And instead they can provide wood for us. Currently, from just getting this one wood supply, we can even put it up to level 3, but even just the one wood is going to give us an insane amount of wood. 290. If we did it to level 3, we'd get 870 wood. Now that's probably a little overkill, so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them one of the taverns. I'll take some wood, and maybe I'll also take some coal. Why not? And from there, I'll accept that, and I'll be able to start pulling in wood. Taxes are basically pretty massive, actually. They're taking up nearly all of our needs besides the carpenters. Carpenters use a lot of wood, but there you go. And then with coal, yeah, we're going to get a bunch from there as well, so we could start selling coal. Anyway, you can see how this is so beneficial for you to really make your city work even better by providing even more resources. Regions are super powerful. As soon as you can get some, it's probably better. Just be careful about the empire game. I'm surrounded by, I think this one's all right. There's not that many empires to deal with, but if you're around really big empires, just be careful. You might not be able to beat them. So challenging them, probably not a good idea. Now, as you probably figured out, if you haven't played this game before, there is an insane amount of menu. And I gotta be real with you, I've been playing for 120 or so hours. I'm still finding menus. My general tip is to read the tooltips and listen to what they're actually telling you. When I found it, I can click on any of these plebeians. It's gonna tell me a whole bunch of information. This seems like it's lore building, but this is only one of the menus for just people. I could look at their properties and identify what are the things that they're actually doing right now. Do they have their basic needs met? Currently they don't have any drink. Maybe I should work on a tavern, or maybe I should work on a restaurant or something. Do they have injuries? If they do get injured, are they going to be able to go to a hospital? If they have exposure, they're going to be able to go to a hearth, or if they're exhausted, are they going to be able to take care of themselves, right? The service needs here down here tell me the frequency that they're going to actually need those things. So things with really low frequency, for example, Kryptonians, the spectacles, they're not going to want to see the grand arena that much. But this number here for the lavatory is 3.5, is much bigger. This is the frequency that they're going to want to go to the lavatories. Not specifically by days, but it's how frequently they'll generally visit these service per year. And so if you don't have that service, then you can't provide it. So these guys right here, punishment, I don't have anything for punishment right now. I don't have anything for vanity, so barbers. I don't have any bathing houses, which is going to be a big thing for Kryptonians. But I've got a few of other things. I got a bunch of wells. I got skinny dipping available. I have news crews, hearts, all that kind of stuff. It can tell you a little bit about your Kryptonians, whether they're heat resistant or whatever. It tells you their consumption rate, how much they actually consume a thing, or their personality, whether they're tolerant, aggressive, or merciful. That's just the properties. You can also look at the fulfillment, and the fulfillment is really helpful for me to understand the breakdown in my logistics and the breakdown, I think more so, in their happiness and fulfillment. From here, I can see, okay, this person would get a little bit of fulfillment from being a noble, but not that much. Another really big one is clothing. So I can see here, they're not getting fulfillment from clothing. It's very little, and that's a gigantic bar, and so maybe that's something I should invest in, making sure I have enough clothes. And if I look at that, currently I'm actually negative in my clothes, and so I really should focus on producing clothes, and whichever is the easiest way for me to do so. Might that be trade, or it might be making a tailor and getting some leather, making clothes that way. But I should probably satisfy that because it seems very important to them, and they're all like this. All the plebeians are like this. Their work fulfillment is there. Retirements are a really big one. Furniture, they don't have any access to furniture right now. I'm using it just for my other production things. Food servings, drink preference. These are all menus that help you understand a little bit more about what's going on in your city and help you understand what things should I actually be focusing on. And this is just from one area. But the menus you have for workforce and understanding where are my actual warehouses at. I started naming my warehouses because I realized this is becoming an issue. This is deactivated for some reason. I don't know why. That seems dumb. Why would I deactivate that? Oh, because it's all screwed. Never mind. I forgot. I messed up this playthrough. Don't work on it. You can also identify tools. So if you have a bunch of tools, you could actually give them to the farms and they will increase output. I didn't know that. Wait, what? I didn't know that. Is that for real? Wait, what? Equipment boosts the efficiency of rooms when equipped. Each tool degrades with a rate of 4% per day. Bro, what? You can boost the efficiency? You see what I mean? You see what I mean? You can look at your workforce, how many people are employed, how many are incapacitated, odd jobbers, which you also see up here. That's what that number is, how many people are just available to do jobs. And then the priority level, we talked about that a little bit. You can even set the species work groups. So if I only wanted a specific species to work in specific areas, like let's say for the mining area, I really only want good mining species here. So maybe like Dondorians or something. I think Garthemi are okay. I can't remember. I could do that there as well. I recommend you really do take your time to understand what these menus actually mean because there's tooltips for everything. And I found myself glossing over a lot of information and not really digesting what it was actually doing or leading to. And it gives you a lot of clues. I will say though, it's not perfect and it's definitely not easy. So take your time. Over my many failed runs, I've learned a couple of things. And one of them is that decorations are king. If I go to my most recent playthrough, which I'm actually very excited about, I immediately focused on decorations as soon as I could. Any sort of area, any sort of place that I felt like I was seeing Kryptonians or plebeians or whatever, I needed to have decorations every single place. And so now my hearth not only has the hearth itself, it's got benches around it, it's got flowers, there's torches everywhere. Where people live, I put a whole bunch of things, also a bunch of flowers. It's in the winter right now, so they don't look that cool, but torches are everywhere, flowers are everywhere, benches are everywhere. Those are small things that go a really long way. Decorations are, surprisingly powerful. And even when you're pressing on decorations here, these are the ones you've already built. All those areas that are black, that don't have anything, those are candidates for putting decorations. The reason that this matters is because if you have those big areas like over here where you don't have any decorations, when people are walking through that, if they wanted to get fulfillment from that, they're not going to get it, which means their natural fulfillment and happiness is going to go down. And so by having those scattered wherever people are, it makes the city look nicer. It also makes it more functional. And each species kind of has different things that they like in decorations. So Kryptonians, they're not really big fans of the humidifiers or the death monuments, but I know for sure that like the Garthemi really like humidifiers, and I know that humans really like sculptures, and most people are kind of mid about benches, right? But decorations are massive for sustaining your bigger populations. It's not going to be that big of a deal early on, but I promise you, if you build it in early, it's going to make it so much better later on. That also goes the same thing with roads as well. I'm starting to work on different roads over in this city. I haven't done too much yet, but even just having roads makes people happier. And again, if you have questions about what makes people happy, go and click on this. It'll tell you their road preference, their building preference, all that kind of stuff. And then you can start building that in. One last note, I do want to mention this. Some of the species like roundness. What does that actually mean? Well, roundness is a lie. If you look at the shape barrier, you can see here any species who likes roundness. If you click on shape, you're going to see a bunch of red here. Now you may be asking yourself, hey Laundry, that's all red. I don't understand what you're talking about. The entire thing is red. That can't be good, which is true. However, although this is bad, comparatively roundness is only so-so for my Crotonians. They like roundness, but they don't like love it. And the opposite of roundness, squareness, they have no opinion about it, so it's not that big of a deal. Whereas the Tilapia are different. The Tilapia really like roundness, and they don't like squareness at all. And so you're limiting the amount of just general benefits that you're having because of the shape. Now, that's definitely something I can see here being an issue, but I gotta be real with you, roundness sucks. Roundness sucks to figure out. What I have found, though, is that roundness is a lie. It's not actually round. Let me give you an example. Let's just go ahead and put down a structure here. Just any structure. It's not that big of a deal. And we'll make it with wood, because why not? Let's just use the tool here. And let's go ahead and make an ellipse. So no, let's not do that. Now let's do it. Screw it. These guys will work on an ellipse there. We're going to do one with the brush as well. And then we're going to do one that is a square. And then lastly, we're going to do one that is a square, but not really a square. Ooh. So I'm going to let them start working on that. You can see the different shapes of things, and they're going to have different effects, but let's just check them out for a sec. These are not buildings, but these are the shapes that you make with buildings. So same basic concept. Let's go ahead and look at these shapes right here. So you can see this from the bottom here. This right here was from the ellipse tool, and you can see it's totally fine. It's got all the right roundness shapes. And down at the bottom here, I used the brush tool and just scaled it up. This one actually didn't have the right roundness shapes. There's something about it on this side here. There's just not enough roundness. Well, in the middle here, this is a completely square building, and it looks fine to me. What gives? Well, in this area right here, this other square somehow is also round. This perplexed me a lot, and I gotta be honest with you, is still kind of insane, but here's actually what roundness is. The way that this game handles roundness is anti-straightness, or as a better term, diagonalness. So this up here totally works. It's a shape that is diagonal. So instead of having the nice straight square area, it is straight, but using the diagonals there. And so this classifies as round, and it gives us this huge area of roundness. But why exactly is there a good area here? Well, it's because this box is right in between two different round buildings that overlap. And so you're counteracting the negative effect of the square box here. However, I would argue that out of all of the round shapes, this is the most round, and yet this is not the one that's classified as roundness. However, let's go ahead and do another test here. I'll just make a brand new one. We're going to use, like I said, the brush tool, and I'm going to use E again. And instead, I'm going to do the size of 15. Let's go ahead and see if that works. I'll put it in an area that doesn't have anything so we can see if this actually works. And we'll just watch him build it. And so you can see now, this one is totally fine. I used the same exact tool to make this as I did that, but this one actually works. And I honestly think that the difference is that my parameters were that this was 15 by 15, and that was an even number, I believe. Regardless, I know 15 by 15 works for the brush tool, but in general, diagonalness is actually roundness. I hope that clears up something, because it's still stupid. A couple of other really small things that I think are super important for new players, and that's the time system. I know this sounds dumb, but there are 16 days in a year, 16 of them, and there are 4 days each season, and there's 4 seasons, right? So 16 days in a year, 4 days per season, 4 seasons. That's helpful to know because basically every single unit of measurement is based off of days, how much production per day, and all that kind of stuff. Even the production of your farms and things like that, like the orchards, will show it per day, even though it doesn't actually produce per day. It produces once per year. So this farm will produce basically 5,200 fruit once per year, and you can see that in the production levels here. It does that once, 30 days, 14 days ago, blah, blah, blah. But here in production, it calculates it out as total to 326, but that's 326 per day. It does the same thing with any sort of production building. If I go to my ore mine here, same kind of thing. This is just production per day. So 16 days per year, food days. Days are like the unit of time you really need to think about. honestly. Next, I want to talk about water pumps. Water pumps are a fantastic tool that you can use to moisturize your fields. So for example, this area over here. I have one water pump, which is gigantic. Whenever you're making a water pump, if you go over to water pump, it's this little tiny thing. It needs to be connected to fresh water. You can see when you press on it, this is where all the water is. It needs to be within this blue area. If it's not, it'll turn yellow. This one individual size, I believe, goes up to 100, maybe 200 tiles or pixels, as I like to call it. But again, and I just found this out, which is huge, you can increase the size by pressing E. You can go all the way up to this size, which will do a full 600 tiles. And that's what I did here. The reason that this matters is because you can use this to extend the moisture of your fertile fields. So currently I can go to soil over here, and you can see that there's a lot of really good fertility over in this area, right? But moisture was kind of a problem. However, because I put down these fields over here, I was able to extend the moisture using just this one pump to all of these fields here. Kind of have a little of a dead area, but it's not that big of a deal. And so now this whole area here is getting basically the max amount of moisture, which makes it produce more. You can see over here comparatively how close this area is to this one canal, which is water is coming from. So one side of this orchard is getting a lot of moisture and the other side isn't. It goes a long way. Moisture and soil is huge. And pumps allow you to extend. You can see this very phallic looking shape here is emanating from the canals that I have. So use water pumps. They emit a lot of noise, but they're really, really helpful for spreading out moisture and then setting up some nice little pools for people to enjoy or farms for you to grow grain out of. Now, the last tip I have for you all is one that I learned the hard way, and that is that you can flood the market with goods. That's right. This is not a game where you can just make a whole bunch of furniture and then sell them and become a millionaire and then buy a bunch of mercenaries and then take over the world. You will flood the market. The more that you sell of an item, the less money you're going to be able to make from it because you're just flooding the market. Just like any other economic system, there's just too much of it in there, and so the price just completely tanks because there's plenty of it to go around. Things that are more scarce are going to be worth more money, right? But any sort of mass trade that you try to do is going to be very difficult for you to sustain, simply because you don't have enough trade partners to actually be effective. And so you can see slowly that the price we've been able to actually sell wood for has gone down. It was at 46 at a peak, went down to 38, and it'll continue to go down if we just keep mass selling it, right? So in general, I recommend that you sell lots of items and you try to mix up what you're actually exporting and importing. It's really difficult to find arbitrage opportunities where basically you're importing a lower quality thing and then where you're importing something for one price and then selling it for a higher price. It's really hard to do that whenever you're a small kingdom anyway. So you really need to expand to get the most that you possibly can out of all the things that this game has to offer and all the kingdoms that are available to trade with. I will say this though, Songs of Syx has so much to do and there's so much to learn from it. Even after 126 hours, man, I just feel like there's so many things that I still fully have not understood about this game and I'm still learning. A lot of the tips that I probably told you guys, I bet there's better ways to do them. I bet there's better ways to figure out how to mess with roundness and how to decorate your area. I bet there's maybe even a better system than just this that I made here, the nice home amenity work system here. I bet that you'd be able to set up trades so that way it's really effective and you can make a whole bunch of money and then all that kind of stuff. I bet there's a better way to interact with your occupied territories and regions. But all of those things that I have told you, I have either learned from researching them or from my own experience in testing. I actually sat down and spent 3 hours tracking what my plebeians were doing to identify how quick are they able to make things, how close do I need to actually make amenities, and like what is the best system for getting the max amount of production. I did try to min-max. And if you're interested in learning about that, I got a video coming out very soon. It might be out by the time this comes out. But you can do all of that. Or you can sit down, play the game, mess up, and just have a good time. I hope the tips are helpful. If they were, feel free to like and subscribe. My name is Laundry. I'll see you around.